Okay. Right. Hello, everybody. I hope that we are live. It does say so. Yes. Brilliant. Okay. And I can see it on the other screen. Fantastic. So, hello and welcome to this happy chat where I am talking to Seth Davis, who is joining me all the way from Colorado. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's great to come across the water virtually. It's across the pond to meet with you.
It's so exciting to be able to do this, isn't it? Now that we're in this technological age where we can meet anywhere, anytime.
It's so convenient.
And so I've just had my tea because it's 7 o'clock here. So I've just had a jacket potato, which was rather nice. Have you had your lunch yet? Because it's lunchtime there.
I have not had lunch, but I actually have a tea with me as well. So
nice.
Yeah.
Perfect. So Seth, you're here because, just to give a bit of background, you're here because I found you somehow on LinkedIn, I think. Yep. And you popped up and I thought to myself, do you know, one of the things that I don't know very much about is sleep, right? And I work with clients because they are either at risk of burning out because they're burning out, or they're recovering from burnout and are managing stress. And of course, one of those symptoms is often really poor sleep. And I guess it's because, and I think this is probably, it's probably my fault, but because I've never really struggled with sleep, it's apart from having young children, but you know, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
That so I've never had to investigate it for myself, and so it feels like there's this massive gap in my knowledge, which is why I reached out to you, because I thought this man knows his stuff about sleep. So you're the director of Sleepably, is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
So can you tell us about that? Tell us stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first I wanted to say that you're kind of in the ideal situation. Like, you never, unless you're looking just to kind of optimize your sleep so you feel better, you never want to actually have to learn about sleep, I feel like, because, you know, if you're really learning about sleep and diving into it, it probably means you have a sleep issue. So, you know, it's kind of ideal that to just, you know, not think about sleep, not worry about sleep. It's just something that happens. And, you know, it's just a natural part of your life. And when you're in that situation, that's kind of, that's where I have to get people to, because usually when people come to me, they're struggling. So I have to get them back to that place where they're not worrying about it. They're not overthinking it. They're just doing it. Yeah. So that, yeah, so you're doing okay there. So as far as myself, yes, I actually got into sleep coaching because I was struggling with sleep myself. So I spent years on and off dealing with trouble sleeping. And I did finally reach a point where, you know, I was visiting doctors and asking about sleeping pill prescriptions and experimenting with all the different sleep aids out there, natural sleep aids. And I wanted to learn how to get myself back to the place where I wasn't worrying about sleep and obsessed with it, and, you know, trying to just struggling with those problems. So I got, you know, I became a certified sleep coach, and I have multiple certifications now, and luckily successfully, you know, solved my own issues. So now I'm a normal sleeper, and I feel great about that. And so I wanted to start helping people who you know, were in the same boat. So I know their struggles, I know all of their worries and things like that. I wanted to help those people to reach this place where they are sleeping better, they're feeling better, and you know, poor sleep is just not a part of life for them. So I started a company called Sleepably, and we work with adults and children. So, you know, kind of work with parents whose kids are not sleeping well. I work with adults and kind of just develop personalized plans for people to kind of take a look into their lives and see what might be causing their sleep issues, whether it's negative thoughts about sleep or anxiety about it, or daily stress, or maybe their routines and their behaviors are, you know, something in there is causing problems. So we start to unravel that and kind of create this path for them to make sleep feel easier and just, you know, get back to natural, worry-free sleep.
I can imagine that you're a really calming coach
I
to
hear that
talk.
a lot.
Yeah, you just are. You just have that persona of being incredibly calm. And that's exactly, I guess, what you need. I mean, all of us need somebody calm in our lives, but when we're stressing about sleep, not getting enough sleep, and the knock-on effect of not getting enough sleep, and you must see this all the time, is, well, it ruins your life, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And that's, yeah, when a lot of people come to me, they use words like, I'm panicking about this, or I can't, I get so anxious before bedtime that I can't wind down, or those negative thoughts like it is ruining my life, or if I don't sleep well tonight, then tomorrow is going to be terrible. And so just when you have all those things kind of swirling around your mind, it is nice to have somebody kind of calming who can kind of talk you off the ledge and say, okay, here's what's actually going on here. You've got this anxiety. Let's take a deeper look into why it's coming up. And, here are some ways to kind of work with it and not let it affect you so much during the night. So kind of just the education part of it, and just having somebody there to kind of talk you down a little bit and just say, I understand where this is coming from. It's normal, but we can work with this. We can stay calm at night. So here's how we're going to do it.
So what is the thing that you see most in people, like reasons for not sleeping? I mean, is it really varied, or do you have sort of one thing that you see more than others? Or
yeah, so I would say there's a few most common things. I'd say one of them is people aren't working with their bodies. So I talk a lot about the circadian rhythm, and just, we have this internal clock, and in an ideal world, this clock just, it does the same thing pretty much every 24 hours. When it's working well, it kind of keeps us feeling well, keeps us sleeping well, and everything just works and feels good. But then there's a lot of things that we can do to accidentally throw our clocks off. So, just from day to day, everything is different. Our body's confused about when's the right time to, go to sleep and, be drowsy and fall asleep, or wake up and be alert. And, it affects our daytime energy and everything. So it's kind of working with teaching people how to work with their body's natural rhythms, so that their sleep cycle works well, and that everything just works good and feels good.
yeah, I mean, it all sounds like magic. How do you do that? How do you get somebody's circadian rhythm back to where it needs to be?
Yeah, so a big part of it is just remembering that it is a clock. It's our internal clock. And so we can sort of set the clock by certain things that we do. So part of it is making sure to have a consistent bedtime and a wake up time as much as possible. So when we do that, our body sort of pays attention to those things. And so it knows, okay, at 10 p.m., we're tired, we go to sleep. At 6 a.m., we're awake, we're ready to get the day started. So our body kind of pays attention to those times. And if we're all over the place, one night we wake up at 6 a.m., the next day we wake up at 9 a.m. and it's all over the place. Our body's just confused, and we tend to feel not very good and sleep not very good during those times. And we can also influence it by when we eat our meals. If we have consistency there, by when we get exposure to light and darkness, when we have physical activity, when we actually move our bodies. So those are all kind of things that, and temperature too, like temperature, we can manage our exposure to temperature. So those are all kind of signals. Yeah.
Tell me more about temperature. I'm interested in what way, to get us warmer or colder, or what?
Yeah. So our body basically, throughout the day, throughout the 24-hour cycle, our body temperature fluctuates. So sometimes our body temperature is cooler, sometimes it's hotter. And if you think about, so maybe 1,000 years ago, when we didn't have electricity and heaters and everything, people basically, when it was dark outside and the temperature was dropping, then our bodies just knew that it was dark outside, it's nighttime, time to fall asleep. And that signals when it's time to produce melatonin too, which is a hormone that tells us to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, back then, the sun would come up, the temperature would rise. And so that's another signal. Okay, it's morning. It's time for us to get up and do our thing. And so since now we have electric heat, we have electric lights. And so, sometimes our environment can kind of confuse us because we have, if we have the lights on until midnight, our body still thinks that it's daytime. If you were trying to fall asleep, normally our temperature would drop naturally. But if we have the heater up or our blankets are stacked too warmly or whatever, then we don't get that signal that it's cooling down and it's time to produce melatonin and fall asleep. So those are kind of external factors that we can control to give ourselves the signal that it's time to fall asleep or wake up.
This is so fascinating, isn't it? Because actually it's about, what I'm hearing is going back to living naturally, isn't it? All of those cues that we have are there in the world naturally, in our environment, and yet we live so peculiarly, I think, for humans, that we're not living like we should be.
Right. Yeah. We're kind of there's a natural, like our body is looking for these natural signals, and sometimes the way that we live, we're just not getting those signals. We're not giving ourselves those signals, so it's can mess with our sleep and how we feel during the day.
So it seems so simple, doesn't it? And yet it's incredibly difficult. Thinking about watching television in the evening, blue light from your phone, all of that, the stuff that we've got coming in, information we've got coming in to us at times that we really maybe ought to be quiet and calm.
Sure. It does seem so simple, but you're right.
Yeah, and also, I'm thinking about all the information that comes in from the media, all the stuff that's going on in the world that isn't great, and all the worries and anxieties that we take with us to bed. Late news, I can never watch it because it makes me really stressed.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's like, so your original question too was just some of the things I see most often, and anxiety is definitely one of those things. So whether it's about sleep or about other things in life, and so we're dealing with that anxiety as we try to go into bed, and then that makes it harder to sleep. So, like you said, it could be from watching stressful news. It could be from it's an hour before bed and we read this email from work about, oh no, I have to do this thing, or it's thinking about something that's going to happen tomorrow or next week, and kind of we're worrying about it, and and trying to, so there's so many different things that can feed that anxiety or that stress. But usually that anxiety or stress is something I see that causes people to have trouble falling asleep, or wake up throughout the night, or wake up with the racing mind, or things like that. So anxiety and stress are two really big ones as well.
Yeah, massive. And I guess that's the arena that I work in too. And so I'm interested in, how do you, like, as a coach, how do you help people manage that anxiety so that it doesn't have that knock-on effect on the sleep?
Yeah, so part of it is kind of figuring out what the anxiety is about. So especially if it's sleep related anxiety, we take a look at some of their thoughts about sleep. So for example, a big part of dealing with insomnia is looking at kind of your thoughts and your beliefs about sleep. So if they're really negative, then they tend to influence your sleep. So for example, some people have this thought in their head that I'm just a terrible sleeper. I always have been a terrible sleeper. I always will be a terrible sleeper. And so when you think something like that, that becomes your identity. And so, that belief is in there, and it just, you kind of manifest it, like that becomes your reality. Same thing if, if I don't sleep well tonight, I'm going to have a terrible tomorrow. And so not only does that put pressure on you, so it puts pressure on, I have to sleep well tonight, or tomorrow's going to be terrible, and pressure is just not good for sleep in general. But also the following day, you could actually manifest that by, I didn't sleep well last night, so today's going to be terrible. I'm going to be in a bad mood. I'm going to, this and that, and you kind of just, you create a bad day for yourself. And it doesn't need to be like that. So I kind of help people to see what those thoughts are, and then find ways to kind of shift them in their mind. So whether it's figuring out whether those thoughts are just inaccurate, they're just not based in truth, whether they're just overly negative, and how can we shift those to a more positive, realistic view, or kind of create a new reality. So for example, if it's, if it is that thought about, tomorrow's going to be terrible if I don't sleep well tonight, well, what can we do about that? Can we go out of our way to have a great next day and kind of prove to your brain that's not necessarily true? Can we just be gentle with ourselves and kind of have self-compassion, and just, so it's kind of working with those thoughts in the to reduce their impact and eventually kind of fade away the emotional impact that they have on you. And that can be helpful for sleep and how you feel during the day too.
Sounds amazing. You're speaking my language, Seth. Absolutely. That self-compassion and how pliable actually that our brains are if we take control of giving it different patterns. So yeah, it sounds absolutely excellent. We've got a couple of questions that I think have come in because I haven't been able to read because I've been like this listening to you. So I'm just going to read to see if these are actual questions or they might just be messages to us. But Vicky says, what if you aren't getting these signals? Is it okay to take melatonin to help our body sleep? So I think Vicky's talking about the circadian rhythm. If you're not getting those signals, is it okay to take melatonin?
Yeah, so I hear about melatonin a lot, and here's my opinion on it. It's kind of shared by a lot of sleep experts, but basically with melatonin, our body does produce it naturally. We can, so our body produces it naturally, and we can, as I said, influence when the timing of that. So, with the light exposure, temperature, sleep schedule, all those things, we can kind of influence when the melatonin production happens. But in general, our bodies do produce, a sufficient amount of melatonin. What can happen is that, and in general, so doctors usually recommend with melatonin that usually the only time you need to supplement with it is if you are older. So we're talking maybe 60s or 70s, your body does sometimes start to produce less of it. So when you're, up in years, you might start to supplement with it if your doctor recommends it. Some people naturally produce less of it in their bodies, but I think that's more of a rare thing. So you'd have to get tested to see your hormone levels. Or if you're going on a vacation, you need to adjust for jet lag. Sometimes it'll recommend to use it briefly. But in general, it's not something that is recommended to supplement with for, weeks or months or years. It's just, just a very temporary thing for a lot of people. And there's, studies are still kind of inconclusive on the long-term effects of supplementing with melatonin. So it's kind of unknowns about what it looks like if people do it for years. And finally, with the amount that you find in bottles of melatonin can be up to, I think, like 500% more than is actually on the bottle. So people might be really dosing themselves with too much melatonin based on the amount in there. So there's kind of just all these unknowns. The final thing is that, I lost my train of thought.
I do all the time.
Yes.
I'm always on that train going in the wrong direction. Sorry, you found
my train came back. It's back. Okay, so basically our bodies, I want to say they produce 0.3 milligrams of melatonin naturally for most people. Okay. And if you think of what's in a bottle of it's anywhere between 1 milligram to, some people take 10 milligrams of it. So that's up to, a couple thousand times more than our body actually produces. So we're just kind of hammering our bodies with melatonin. So basically, I guess to sum it up, a lot of times people take too much, like way too much. There's no long-term evidence about how it affects us. There's no long-term results. And in general, most of the time, we don't need to supplement as long as we're just giving ourselves the right signals.
And it sounds like the way to do that is just so natural, isn't it? It's just, getting yourself into a pattern of doing being at the right temperature and the right lighting and all of that we would have in the natural world. So yeah, I'm really interested. Amanda, you've just mentioned, should I write my question here? If you could do that, that would be amazing, because you did write it to me, and Seth and I have both looked at your question, but I can't get it easily. So if you could pop it in there, that would be amazing, and then I can read it out to Seth. And then Kate Mitchell, and Kate said, hi Kate, lovely to see you. She says, and the info we get from our own brain. So yes, anxiety in our own brain, so continual brain chatter. And I think that's probably something that we sort of both see in our practices, isn't it? The constant, I guess, negative voice.
Yeah, a lot of negative voice. So it's a matter of like I said, kind of introducing more positivity. And like you talked about kind of changing the patterns, that neuroplasticity, and kind of shifting the negativity to positivity, which takes practice. But it's very important. And also just learning to kind of calm the mind as well. So, teach like relaxation techniques and, visualization and mindfulness, and just finding ways to bring the brain into this present place, and just let it focus on something more positive, and just kind of be in the moment, rather than dealing with what's happened in the past or what's happening in the future, and just kind of be here.
You so speak my language. You're my favorite sleep coach.
Thank you. We're on the same level.
Definitely. So Kate's come back. She said, sorry, the above question wasn't clear. More of a statement. How about the 3 a.m. pattern of waking with a racing mind? Do you have any tips for Kate waking at 3 a.m. with a racing mind?
Yeah, so part of it comes down to, if we're looking at kind of addressing the racing mind part of it, I think part of it is like daytime stress relief. So maybe practicing some mindfulness or relaxation techniques during the day, so that we I kind of equate it to, we have this steam building up with pressure, whatever. So we have the steam levels building up. And if we kind of release some steam throughout the day, then when we hit the bed at night, we're not just have it all built up. So I think what you do in the daytime partly affects that. And then in the evening, it's kind of also learning how to deal with that. So for example, if you're lying in bed and you have this racing mind, you're uncomfortable, you're, in a bad place mentally, then sometimes I would recommend, getting up to go do something different. So completely saying, I'm going to take a little break from sleep right now. From trying to sleep, I'm going to go, read a little bit of a book or listen to part of an audiobook or something. And so, just saying, I'm going to take my racing mind and just apply it to something that's more calming and enjoyable. I'm not going to lie here trying to force myself to sleep while I'm dealing with this racing mind. So sometimes that's good, because we don't want to associate the bed with a racing mind or with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So we want to just move that out. And then also, kind of teaching some of those techniques to, just kind of stay calm, to be mindful, to kind of, focus on breathing, focus on imagery or something like that, and just kind of shift let those racing thoughts just kind of move them to the side and have something else better to focus on.
And then is it head back to bed after an amount of time doing that, going back to bed as if it's bedtime again, starting again?
Yeah, so I kind of just I don't put a specific amount of time to it. If you look at some of the insomnia doctors and clinicians, they'll recommend 20 minutes here, like go leave the room for 20 minutes, then come back. And I think that kind of puts time pressure on you, because you might be watching the clock to, it's been 20 minutes, it's been 19 minutes. So it's kind of more on how you feel. So if you feel like, you're in a better place, you've kind of calmed down and relaxed, and you're sort of drowsy, then that's a good time to go back in and just, lie down and rest. So I kind of go based more on how you feel.
Fabulous. We've got lots of questions coming in, Seth. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I've lost my mouse. Where's my mouse? So Alexandra says to echo Kate, any strategies for waking up after only a couple of hours sleep? So I guess that's the same question, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And then Amanda says, with anxiety I have at the moment, it wakes me up at about 5:30 and 6:30 every morning with instant physical anxiety symptoms. I try to go back to sleep with dried hops and lavender sachets and crystals in my hand, but nothing works. I cannot get back to sleep, even if I don't try to. I'm really tired, and I know my day will be exhausting. So any tips?
Yeah, so this is one where I would look at, there's a couple things I would look at. First, I would look at the sleep schedule, and I would just look to see how much total time that she's giving herself to sleep. So sometimes we give ourselves like too much time to sleep. So I'm going to lie in bed for 9 hours trying to sleep. But I wake up after 7 hours. What's going on? And so sometimes we're actually giving ourselves too much time to sleep, and our body just doesn't need that much sleep, or can't get that much sleep. So I would just look at the sleep schedule and see, what time is she going to bed, and see if there's anything within that schedule we'd adjust. But talking specifically about the anxiety, as I said, sometimes it's better just to not, say, okay, I'm awake, I'm anxious, I'm feeling this. I'm not going to push myself to try harder to fall asleep, because a lot of times the harder we try to sleep, the harder it becomes to sleep. So I'm just going to accept this. I'm going to, do some, I can lie here and just relax comfortably, and just know that even just relaxing is giving me some benefits. Or I can just get up and, I don't need to get up and start, working or something like that, but I can at least get up and do something calm, sip on some tea, or just, so it's kind of how I react to it is how I would look into. Talking about some of the relaxation exercises there, I think she said that she has some she does, but, working on, like just focusing on breathing, or even doing like a guided meditation, I think would be good. But just ways to kind of stay calm in that moment, so it's not a panic, it's not feeding the anxiety, basically.
Breath is so underestimated, isn't it? Coming back to breath and breathing well. It can be so incredibly powerful. And actually, Amanda, after that, has said, I do the nose mouth breathing, which calms my heart, but I still don't get back to sleep. So
yeah, I would be curious too, just like how long this has been going on for. Like, did she used to sleep for longer? And just because, sometimes, and also age too. So as we age, sometimes our sleep patterns change. We start waking up earlier and going to bed earlier. And so that's something that can change with age as well. And sometimes, I meet with people who they really I really want to sleep till 8 a.m., but I can only sleep until 6:30. And so we kind of work together and find out that 6:30 is kind of just what their body, that's the time that their body wants. And so once they sort of accept that and make sure they're getting enough total sleep time, some people start to think of it as kind of a superpower. Like, I get to be up before the kids, I get to have some me time and everything. So sometimes it is just seeing, like, is that, if you are getting enough total sleep, but you're waking up at that time, maybe it's just what how your body is made.
So Amanda says in her case it is anxiety. She can say that it definitely is anxiety. So when she doesn't have the anxiety, it doesn't happen. So it's only anxiety related. And I guess the answer to that is managing that anxiety, isn't it? And
that's the root cause. Yeah,
that's the root cause. Okay, well, thank you for your questions. Katie said, did you say in the 20 minutes, and I guess that's the 20 minutes of when you've got up, to listen to an audiobook or something, mindfulness, or some mindfulness?
Yes.
Yeah, let's just go back to that. Well, we didn't say it was definitely 20 minutes either, did we? That was it. I heard that.
Yes, you will. If you look around, you will see a lot of people recommending 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But like I said, that's I think putting a time limit on it is not helpful for a lot of people. It just creates pressure, and it also promotes clock watching. So we don't, the better thing to do is to not even pay attention to the time during the night. So like if you have a clock, cover it up so you can't even see it, and just tell yourself that it's still nighttime, so I still have more time to rest, but I don't know what time it is.
Yeah.
So kind of ignorance is bliss when it comes to that. Yeah. But so during that time, that's also something that's kind of personalized too. So sometimes I work with people to discover, what is it that keeps you calm and enjoyable at that time. That's, so for some people it is reading a book. For some people it's listening to an audiobook. Some people like to do a part of a puzzle. Some people like to do something sort of boring, like, fold laundry or clean part of a cupboard or something like that. And some people like to do mindfulness, like a guided meditation, or or something like that. So it really is just kind of for you, what puts you in a good place mentally, what keeps you kind of calm and relaxed, and what kind of, just focuses your mind on that rather than racing thoughts or anxiety or whatever.
Yeah, it's so personalized, isn't it? It's personal to you, what you find calming. For me, I love to meditate. I'm a bit addicted to meditation, but for that reason, that whenever I feel any anxiety or anything, I've got a go-to that I do, and it works for me. And I guess if I wasn't sleeping, that would be what I would choose to do, is to meditate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
really.
for myself, I discovered I do like audiobooks. I just discovered that a few years ago. And so, like before bed, I listen to audiobooks. And even as a sleep coach, I have the occasional rough nights. And so I've gotten a lot better at how I react to that. So I just kind of stay calm through the whole thing. I never get panicked or anxious. But so, if I have a night where it's just like, okay, I'm awake, I maybe I had a stressful work thought or something. And so if I realize I'm not going to fall back asleep, I do just put on an audiobook and just kind of listen to science fiction, something that doesn't really mean anything. I'm not trying to learn anything, and I can just, focus on the story.
Yeah.
And so that's my thing.
Can I ask you a question about sort of when you were having sleep difficulties? How did that manifest itself for you? What was your night like?
Yeah, so it was probably familiar to a lot of people, but it would vary. Like sometimes I would have trouble falling asleep. So it'd be 2, 3 in the morning before I finally fell asleep. Sometimes it was waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to fall back asleep. Sometimes it was waking up at 3 in the morning, not being able to fall back asleep. So it was a combination of all those things. It was, let's see, thinking about sleep throughout the day. Like, am I going to sleep tonight? What if I don't sleep? What do I need to do to try to sleep tonight? It was complaining to my coworkers about how poorly I slept the night before and how tired I was. Pretty much everything, all the things that go along with insomnia.
All the things mixed together. Wow. And so did you see a sleep coach, or did you just learn all of this stuff and apply it to yourself?
Yeah, so I got on Google because I was curious about, is there such a thing as an adult sleep coach? I knew that there were baby sleep coaches, but do adults have those? And I saw that there were starting to become more and more sleep coaches. It's still kind of a newer thing. And I figured, well, I could spend that money to pay somebody to sleep coach me, or I could spend that money to actually become one, sort of learn what all the things I was doing wrong and fix myself. And then I've always wanted to also own a business, so kind of create a business. So it just all came together at the right time.
Oh, it's perfect. It's the perfect thing. And so I'm just going to be nosy now. Before you were a sleep coach, what did you do?
So I actually started out as a journalist. I worked for a newspaper here in Denver for a few years. And then I went into sort of marketing communications writing for companies. So it was all just writing and editing. And I think that actually that's where some of my sleep issues started, was because I had deadline pressure a lot. So deadlines, I had, performance pressure. Like, are people going to like the articles that I'm writing for the newspaper? My schedule was kind of weird sometimes. So I'd be kind of working late into the evening sometimes, or early in the morning. And so just all those things kind of stress and pressure and this weird sleep schedule. So it was not a good combination for me.
What an amazing story, though, to have experienced that difficulty with sleep and then to go and train yourself to be able to sort out your own issue and then to be helping everybody else. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. Obviously, I'm always, from my coaching, really, really excited to see people's movement from doing one thing to doing, what really fills them with joy. And it seems like you're really happy doing what you do and creating this, this amazing business. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah. And it still feels, I mean, I went through sleep issues for so long that it still feels sort of new to be a good sleeper. Like, it's just because I think I struggled with it on and off for 15 years or so. So it was just so ingrained that it still feels strange to be a good sleeper. But also to be helping people. Like, I've worked with some people where, they, like, one person was afraid they're getting close to retirement, and he was just afraid that he was going to be miserable throughout retirement because he was just not sleeping and so tired and everything. And just other people who, they just had so much of this anxiety that they were just unhappy. And so to help them get through it and see that their lives have changed for the better, like to actually be changing lives in a real way is pretty crazy.
There's nothing like it, is it? I mean, this is my thing, and I just love it. I love watching that amazing transformation from when you start working with somebody to, how life changes for them. And I can imagine that sleep is such an integral part, isn't it, of how we are, how we show up in the world the next day and onwards, that to be able to help somebody overcome that, it must be amazing. You must see some amazing transformations.
Very much. Yeah. It's like you said, it's just the transformation is amazing. And just the relief, I think there's just a lot of relief there to make it through to the other side, and to leave a lot of those things behind. Like just, you carry around so much anxiety and stress and these negative beliefs about yourself, and to be able to leave those behind, I think is freeing. It's very relieving.
Amazing. So I did have a very quick look on your website, and I noticed that because there's more than just you, is that right? That you have other people other coaches working with you as well, and doing sleep coaching for children as well. So tell me a little bit about that. So what does it look like? If somebody wanted to work with you or you guys, how would that happen?
Yeah, so I guess I'll speak for them too. It's all similar, I guess. But so yeah, somebody would come, they can come to our website, they can schedule a free discovery call, and we'll basically talk about, we'll talk about their sleep issues and see if it's a good fit, or maybe maybe you should go talk to a doctor about that or something. Maybe, if it's a good fit, we can work together, but I'll always try to be helpful with recommendations. But if the person does decide they want to work with us, then we do start to get into that personalized part of it. So we want to start have you fill out some forms about, what are your daily routines and behaviors look like? What does your daily stresses look like? Kind of what are your thoughts about sleep? And so we really do gather this information and narrow in on what are kind of the roadblocks here, whether it's for an adult or for kids. And then we kind of break it down into, okay, so here are a couple of the most impactful things we could possibly look at. So we're going to start with those the first week. Here's why we're looking to change those things. Here's the science behind it. Here's how we're going to do it. Kind of develop that first stepping stone of the plan. And then we, check in during the week just to see how things are going, and, make any adjustments. And then the following week or so, we will get back together and say, here are the next couple things. Do we need to readjust anything from last time? We kind of just do that week by week. And we just, we build we build better habits, build on top of those. We change those thoughts. We teach you how to, stay calm in bed and all those things. And so the goal is that by the end of it, we've left behind a lot of those negative things. We've replaced them with better things, and sleep just feels easier is sort of the goal for it. Like sleep is less stressful, less hard. It just feels easy, feels natural.
Amazing. And all of this, I'm assuming, is done over Zoom, so you can see people in the UK just as you can all around the world.
Exactly. Yeah, I just started working with somebody in Germany yesterday or this week, and worked with people from pretty much all over. So yeah, it's nice to be able to be anywhere, help people from anywhere, and it's always fascinating just to meet people from other places too, and kind of see how their culture and their lifestyle and everything affects their sleep. Because somebody in Saudi Arabia, I worked with somebody from there, and their their celebrations and things sometimes can really affect their sleep. And so we have to kind of find ways to work around that, and and be adaptable.
That's really interesting, and sort of brings you other challenges, doesn't it, in that personalization of what you're offering. I mean, I just think I do think you're one of the calmest people I've ever spoken to. And I want to know this, do you do like guided meditations that you speak?
I hadn't done that, but I released my first online program recently, and part of it I did record some breathing exercises and meditation. So I think I may be headed in that direction.
You definitely need to do that.
Okay. I will.
Good. I'll be looking out for it. I've got some more comments, so I'm just going to throw some more comments. if you're happy for me to. So there might not be questions because I haven't had a chance to look. Is it important, this is from Leslie, is it important to know you have had enough sleep, in that if you are not tired the next day, you know you have had enough sleep if it is only 5 or 6 hours? That's an interesting question. Did that make sense? So if you're not tired, you're getting up, you're not tired, and you've only had 5 or 6 hours, is that enough? Will your body tell you if you haven't had enough sleep?
Yes, and this is a conversation I have with a lot of people, because a lot of times in the media or whatever we see, you need to get 8 hours. You need to get 8 hours at least. But our bodies are all made differently. We all have different sleep needs, and so one person might sleep well and do well with 8 hours. Another person might not even be able to sleep 8 hours if they tried. Maybe 6.5 hours is what's right for them. And so it really is based more on how you feel. So if you wake up and you are, you wake up fairly easily, you have, daytime energy, you feel pretty good during the day, then those are all signs that you are getting enough sleep for your needs. I would say, if you do, if you could comfortably sleep a little bit longer than that, so maybe get closer to 6.5 or 7 hours, it's not a bad thing. But if you if your sleep's around 6 hours but you feel okay during the day, you couldn't sleep longer if you tried, then I would say it sounds like you're getting enough sleep for your needs.
Brilliant. I've just thought of a question. What about napping in the day, having a little sleep in the day? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so they've done a lot of studies that show that napping is healthy. So it's kind of a healthy thing, unless it interferes with your sleep at night. So how it works is that basically we have this chemical in our bodies called adenosine. It's also known as the sleep pressure chemical. And so basically from the time that you wake up in the morning until the time that you go to sleep, you're constantly building up more and more of this chemical. And so the ideal thing is that when we get to bedtime, we want to have built up this huge supply. We're drowsy, melatonin starts being produced, takes over, and then we slip off into sleep. So if you take too long of a nap or too close to bedtime, then it can eat away at that sleep pressure, so that when you get to bed, you're not as prepared. So usually I would recommend taking sort of a power nap. So maybe like 10 to 25 minutes, somewhere in there. And try not to do it later than 2 or 3 in the afternoon, just because the longer the nap you take and the closer to bedtime, it's more likely to affect your nighttime sleep. But other than that,
I love the idea.
Other than that, they're healthy.
I don't have one. I fantasize about having a nap in the middle of the day.
I'm not a big napper either.
No, but I'd like to be. I love sleeping. And so I remember reading something about, and this may be absolute rubbish, about taking a power nap, that if you lay on your bed and you put your car keys in your hand, and then you fall asleep, and as you fall asleep, your hand will let go of the keys and wake you up. That apparently that's the right amount of time. Have you ever heard that?
I have heard that. I don't know the exact, I don't know if that's exactly correct with the timing of it, but I remember reading that it was somebody. There was a historical figure who used to do that. I don't know if it was a United States president or something like that, but that's where I first read about that. But it would be interesting to find out, because I don't know how long it takes you to drop your keys, but it's interesting.
And maybe some people don't drop their keys. I don't know. I don't know why that stuck in my mind as one of those pieces of information that you never know whether it's true or not.
Well, if you try it, I'd like to hear the results.
Okay. All right. So one question from Vicky, and Vicky asks, do you work with people with ADHD? As we know that it never has a quiet brain, and do you have any particular tips for those who suffer? She also says your voice is so wonderful and calm.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love that compliment.
Ready.
Thank you. I love that. But yes, so I have worked with a few people with ADHD, and it is more complicated, because they do have the racing mind, and also just the medications also are stimulants. So that's another kind of double trouble there. But sometimes it helps to look at the timing of the medication. That's something you talk about with your doctor, probably, to maybe you take it in the morning and hope ideally it's kind of worn off by the nighttime. But I would say it does make it more complicated. And so we can work with, still ways to calm the brain. We can still look at all of the things with, schedule and things like that. But, I think that with that, there's only so much you can do, possibly. I mean, we can definitely work on calming the brain and things, but if biologically, if it's just so, that's causing the brain to race, then I don't know how much I can do with that.
It's a really interesting one, I think, because my son has ADHD, and he's had periods of taking medication, which, as you say, is a stimulant. On the medication, he was not sleeping well, he must have slept a little bit, but he felt like he wasn't sleeping at all. So then getting up for college was just awful. I mean, real sort of knock-on effect. He's decided not to take the medication now, and he's sleeping much, much better off the medication. And then he deals with his ADHD symptoms by using meditation and all the things that you're talking about, actually. And, that circadian rhythm, he's really sort of getting into waking up much earlier, because teenagers especially will sleep in forever if they could. Sure. But he's really understanding that getting up when it's getting light and going to bed, not necessarily now, it's in the winter, but going to bed when it's dark. Such a simple thing, isn't it? But it can also, help people with ADHD, I would say, as well. It's just as my little penny's worth there.
No, I love hearing about the way that he is dealing with it. It all sounds like he's adapting and making the best of things, and it sounds like he's doing a really good job of dealing with that. And yeah,
absolutely, and at such a young age as well. It is really impressive, actually. A very, very proud mother.
Yeah, it's very mature. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all the questions. As I'm just scanning through that, I think there's some conversation going on in there, which is really wonderful that you're all chatting to each other. And I think you would all agree that this has been absolutely brilliant. I mean, it really has. It's just been really, really interesting. And I said to you, didn't I? It would just be like we're having a coffee, and it's really felt like that too. And you really do know your stuff, clearly. And I will be taking away loads of information from this. Is there anything that you would like to tell us, or anything that I haven't asked you that you would like people to know, or have I missed anything?
No, I think that I loved that conversation. It was just like having coffee with the friends. Yeah, I guess can I tell people how to work with me if they would like to? Okay, so yeah, basically anybody who, if you're struggling with insomnia or things like that, you'd like to see if sleep coaching is right for you, or if you sleep okay, but you just want to optimize it so you kind of feel better and perform better during the day. I work with all those things. So you can come to our website, which is sleepably.com. That's basically sleepably.com. You can schedule a free call, and we can just have a friendly chat about this to see if it's right. And yeah, and like I said, I released an online course too. It kind of makes dealing with this fun in a way, if that's possible, dealing with insomnia. So you can check it. It's called Sleep Journey. But other than that, I'd love to talk with anybody, but it's been a pleasure being here.
Fantastic. And the other thing to say is that Seth is in my group, in the Sustainable Leadership group. So, you can speak to each other in there, tag each other. So you can tag Seth in there. And ask him questions as well. So if you think of any more questions that we haven't covered, or maybe tonight when you're trying to sleep, you have a question, just pop it under the video. So the video is going to stay there in the group, so you can pop the question in there, and Seth and I will keep our eye on that over the next week, and we'll answer any questions for you. So lots of ways that you can get hold of him. And we've got lots of thank yous coming in now. So thank you so much. Thank you both. It's been wonderfully informative. Kate says, many thanks, Seth. We'll now follow you on LinkedIn. So
that's great.
Yeah, that's another place, isn't it, to look you up as well. But it's so easy now to find people. Now we know their names, and also I'll put the link to your website in the comments as well, so people will be able to do that. But I'm just so delighted to have met you. I really am. It's like sometimes you meet people and you think, yes, I'll keep this person in my life, and you're one of those.
We'll stick around.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe one day we can collaborate on something awesome.
I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, so much for giving us your time and for answering all those questions. I can tell that it's gone down very well just because of all the questions that we've had. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for everybody for just taking the time to be here and chat with us.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I'm going to stop the video now. So thank you, Seth. Bye-bye.
Bye.